Alright, so we're back with Keith Arem. Had to take a few hours break. It got really busy here at the convention.
Yeah, very busy.
Especially at this booth. But let's try and pick up where we left off. And how did you get into the video game industry?
I started actually in the music industry, which is a little unusual, but I was with the band Biohazard PCB and then Contagion, and we were on Capitol Records, and I was touring for years. And the whole time I was on tour, we were playing video games in the back of the tour bus. So it was this sort of a natural progression to get involved in doing music and sound effects for video games. And I started working for some independent companies, and then I got brought in and I started working at Virgin Interactive. And after 7 years, we got bought out by Electronic Arts, and I became the director of audio with Electronic Arts, the Pacific Division. And then about 9 years ago, I started my own company, which is PCB Productions.
Well, actually, you know what? Now that you mention Electronic Arts,
yeah,
this is a question out of personal curiosity. Did you work at the office building for Electronic Arts over on the West Coast?
We actually worked in the West Coast building in Orange County. What happened was that EA tends to buy companies and sort of bring them into the fold, sort of like the Borg, I guess. And so we were, the Virgin offices were down in Orange County, and all of our studios that we were there became part of the EA offices in Orange County. They've now merged up in Los Angeles, and EA LA is now formed, and that's where they do all their work predominantly in Los Angeles.
And are their office buildings really as nice as I hear they are?
They are very nice. The EA's got very, very nice offices. All their offices are fantastic.
I've heard some wacky, crazy things about their office buildings.
They are fairly true.
So, now as far as the video game industry, and then with this new graphic novel, Dead Speed,
Dead Speed, right.
Were you interested in comic books first or video games? Or vice versa?
Video games have always been sort of my passion. It just, I grew up playing video games. I play video games and have a secret addiction to video games to the point where I kind of have to keep myself from playing video games sometimes because otherwise I won't get anything else done. Yeah, so video games was always sort of the starting point for what I was doing. The comic book side, I grew up with comic books and loved comic books, but I wasn't really like sort of the avid reader that was collecting every single issue of every single kind of book, and I was really attracted to graphic novels. So like Arkham Asylum, when it was out originally with Dave McKean, it was like so fascinating to me because everything was painted and everything was just so detailed, and that's really what I wanted to do if I was going to get involved in doing storyboards for my films, and then ultimately that's how it turned into doing the graphic novels.
Okay, now, is there any one major piece of advice that you would offer to someone if they said, hey, I want to get into the video game industry, or hey, I want to get into the comic book graphic novel industry?
I think that it's, on the graphic novel and comic book industry, I mean, that is absolutely a labor of love. Financially, to see a return on that takes a long time. I mean, the production process takes a lot of time, and the skill set obviously is going to be very subjective to your audience. It requires a lot of marketing, a lot of touring around. Video game industry, obviously a much larger scale, much more a collaborative sort of environment. But in terms of getting into the industry, I think either working with a local developer and also a lot of the school programs that are going out right now are phenomenal, because now what there weren't 5 or 10 years ago, now you can go to most universities and they have game degrees in programming or graphic design or doing music or sound, and with a concentration on doing it for video games. And the technology now has all come together where it's more accessible and you can actually learn to do a lot of the stuff at home and then actually go out and put it to use in the field. So I think it's a good time right now to be able to either actually, it used to be you couldn't go to school and get a degree in what you wanted to do. Now there's actually a lot of options to be able to do that. So that's actually the best place to kind of find out about the education. And I think then going and find a local developer and starting to work and kind of working your way through the different divisions of the game company is absolutely the best way to do it.
Okay. Now, before we move on to talking about Dead Speed, I have 2 more questions for you.
All right.
Have you ever played WoW?
Yes,
World of Warcraft.
I refuse to play for more than about 10 seconds because I will be absolutely addicted.
You're one of those guys who will start and just not stop?
I will be one of those guys that falls over dead and they find me a week later because I haven't eaten or slept.
That's terrible.
Back when we first were working on Command & Conquer, and the guys at one of our other teams were developing it at the Westwood Studios, and we were working with them, doing a lot of the dialogue, and then we were testing a lot of the early versions of it. Our whole company would just shut down at 5 o'clock. The whole company would shut down, and it would be the single single biggest productivity killer in the planet because everyone would just play for hours. And then now with World of Warcraft, it's just unbelievable. So unfortunately, for me to have some semblance of a life, I have to sort of put my WoW account on hold and not play.
Okay. And do you have a list of 1, 3, 5 favorite games of all time?
Of all time.
Of all time.
Oh wow. My number one game I think that I worked on personally was a game called Thrill Kill, which was never released. It was a game we were doing in Virgin. We were doing it with Paradox, and Virgin was going to release it, and it was the first 4-player fighter. It was going to be on the PlayStation. Phenomenal game. Did the soundtrack with my band Contagion. Did all the cinematics, did all the voices. It was a great game. And it happened right at the time when EA came and purchased Virgin, and the game was so violent it was ridiculous. But if you look at games like Mortal Kombat and other games now, the violence level probably wasn't any more than that, but the kill moves were so graphic that EA just said, you know what? Not only are we not going to put this thing out, we're not going to let anyone else put it out, and they just shelved it. And it has since gone on to become one of the largest black market games released on the market because everyone got hold of it anyway, and they lost a lot of money because they probably wouldn't have sold very well. But that was probably my number one favorite game. I think a close second is any of the Call of Duty games. Call of Duty 2 was fantastic. 4 has been my favorite. 6 is probably going to replace it because 6 is just so fantastic. And I think that probably Command & Conquer is my third just because I had a long history with the game and just really enjoyed playing it and the teams that worked on it. And I think that kind of bonded with just my love of the title. So those are probably my top 3. Not everyone's top favorites, obviously, but those I have a personal, sentimental attachment to them.
Okay, all right, great. Well, this is the end of part number 2. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Keith Arem and Adam Lawson's new graphic novel, Dead Speed.